Meet the Candidates series. The Arc of Pennsylvania hosts an interview of Joe DeOrsey, candidate for York County's 47th Health District, by Samantha Dorm, parent. The Meet the Candidates series is an opportunity for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to hear from candidates on disability issues. Candidates from all parties have been invited to participate. The Arc of Pennsylvania is a non-partisan organization and does not endorse political candidates.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Arc of Pennsylvania's Meet the Candidate series. The Meet the Candidate series is an opportunity for our families and self-advocates to hear from candidates running for open seats in both the House and the Senate. Today, joining us is Joe DeOrsey. Joe is a Republican candidate running for the Pennsylvania House 47th District of York County. He is running to replace retiring Representative Keith Gillespie, who he beat in the primary election. Joe was born and raised in York County. He served as a missionary in the Dominican Republic. Some of his key issues are small business development, reducing taxes, and education. So thank you, Joe, for joining us today.
Thank you.
So a little bit about the Arc of Pennsylvania. We are the state's largest advocacy organization for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We are roughly 73 years old, which is just a mind-boggling to me, that we have been leading the cause for advocacy for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. What makes our organization so strong is our chapters. Our chapters are spread throughout the Commonwealth. We have 30 chapters, and with us today, we have the Arc of York County, Josh Leek, who will be taking over here in a minute. But just to let you know that anytime throughout your term, we're here for you. Josh is your go-to person for York County. And Josh is going to tell you a little bit about what his chapter does. We are different throughout the state. All of our chapters are advocacy or chapters, but we also provide home and community-based services, some of them. So Josh can tell you more about the Arc of York County. Josh, take it away.
Thank you very much, Sherry, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Arc of York County, thank you for joining us today. My name is Josh Leek. I'm the Executive Director here at the Arc of York County. This year we are celebrating our 70th year, so we're right behind the Arc of Pennsylvania as far as how long we've been serving our communities. Some of the programs that we have, in addition to advocacy, we also have a supported employment program, Penn Employment Services. It's job placement and on-the-job training for people with intellectual and other disabilities. We also have a summer camp program, as well as an agency with choice program. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Samantha Dorm, who is the parent of one of our program participants. Michael has been involved in programming at the ARC for several years now. I'll let Samantha say exactly how long that's been, but in addition to being a parent, she is also someone who advocates on behalf of all people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So thank you very much, Sam, for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just to give some context, we've been with the program, our family, probably over 10 years now, which had we not had services like Camp Penwood, would not have been able to continue to work in many cases. So it has been a blessing, but also in our household, Camp Penwood is not Camp Penwood, it is Camp Josh, according to my son. So just to put that out there. So good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well, Samantha. Thanks for having me, everyone. And I appreciate meeting with you today virtually.
Just kind of kicking this off this morning, first and foremost, how will you advocate for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families? That's an important component of this, who are on waiting lists for community services.
Yeah, so thank you for that. I'm aware of the waiting list. I got a briefing with Josh and Katie recently, and it is a heartbreaking and shocking thing. I read the statistics, like you mentioned, on how long people tend to wait, and how large the list is. So that's heartbreaking, and I have compassion for that. I think the easy answer to the question, and a lot of the questions, I think, is more funding, which I'm open to. I think when I look at the array of things that our state spends money on, I think this cause has to be near the top. So I'll start off by saying that. But on the other side of the token, I am a fiscal conservative, and fiscal conservatives are always thinking in line with how to save taxpayers' money. So it always is a balance. And to boot, I'm a freshman and I have yet to be through a budgeting process. So it's some of these questions are tough to answer, but I'll do my best. So with that in mind, in addition to funding, I would be inclined to look at alternative advocacy points, like if there are obstacles, non-monetary obstacles that are in the way of providing this community service, of expanding community service, clearing those obstacles, or involving other nonprofits or even churches to get involved in providing a solution. I come from the church world. I've been working at our church for over 6 years. In fact, I'm streaming with you from my office at the church. And something that we often brainstorm as a staff is how can we meet the needs of our community. So that's one of our goals, and I would argue that should be a goal of any church. So that's my long-winded answer to that question.
No problem. Thank you. What investments to expand long-term services and supports in the community for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities will you advocate for?
Yeah, so this is a difficult one to answer because I'm not even in office yet, and I'm a freshman. As I mentioned, I've yet to go through a budgeting process. I think if you asked me this question in 1 or 2 years, I'd have a more direct answer to you. But the short answer is, Samantha, I don't really know. I would be very slow to promise something that I can't deliver. In our first question, we addressed, a major problem. So if we're talking funding, addressing this waiting list, which has thousands of people on it who are waiting, I believe you said for as many as 5 years, that would probably be a focal point. I will say this, though, and I'm not trying to dodge the question at all. I believe that the people of the intellectual and developmental community are valuable, and they are worth advocating for. So whatever that looks like down the road, like you had mentioned yourself, Samantha, getting educated, that's certainly something that I would like to grow in. And, I would hope to have the humility to learn from groups like the ARC. They deserve advocacy. So I'm poised to be an advocate. And I'll say it's a luxury to have a group like the ARC to be a sounding board for a young guy like me who is just learning the process, and hopefully to be a resource when I have questions.
Will you support the closure of Pennsylvania's 4 remaining state centers?
So the answer is yes. Not only do I think good research show that people of intellectual and developmental disabilities are served better in their community with their families and their friends. The bonus in shutting these institutions down would be saving a lot of money for taxpayers in the Commonwealth. So I'm sure there's more information there to know, but from what I know, and as it was explained by the leaders at the ARC, I feel comfortable saying yes, I would advocate for the closure of those.
Thank you, sir. How will you work to address the shortage of direct support professionals that we have here in the Commonwealth?
Yeah, so I mean, again, like you touched on, the easy answer would be more funding, which of course I'm open to from state appropriation. But when I just from a functional mindset, when I hear shortage of workers, I want to know why. So if there's a way other than monetarily, Samantha, to incentivize workers to get in this area of work, whether it's explaining how valuable and important the role is, or like I said before, if there are barriers to getting into employment in this area for qualified people, then we should, by all means, remove those barriers. An idea that I thought of that I can't really put legs to yet, but we could work with vocational schools and universities to make careers in this field more accessible and easier to get into. Is an idea I had. So I think the short answer rather is to address the problem of the shortage by incentivizing in some way, quality people to get into that career.
What actions will you take to assist in reducing the risk in crimes committed against people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Yeah, so as I was reading, the statistics from the literature that was sent over, I believe I read that people in the intellectual and developmental disability community suffer from crimes maybe at 7 times the rate. I think that in assault cases, which is just heartbreaking, and it is a problem, and I think we need to identify it as a problem. The thing that comes to my mind, Samantha, is I think the best deterrent for addressing this problem would be maybe steeper penalties for perpetrators of this crime. That's kind of the first thought that pops into my head, and I would say that that's a sensible measure that we could take to reduce and try to eliminate these types of crimes.
How will you work to ensure the education system in Pennsylvania meets the needs of all children, especially children with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Right. So this would, as a first step, come back to the funding question again, which I'll repeat, I'm certainly open to. And when I consider, Samantha, students, all types of students, I don't consider any group more important than the other. So I think we need to come into this question with that purview. So I think when we talk about funding, I think each group of student and each individual is equally important. I will say I've long been a proponent of school choice because I think it makes sense for money to follow, a student, a parent, and a family. And I'm optimistic, and I would need to look into this more, but I'm optimistic because school choice would create competition. And typically what happens with competition is, whether it's a business or a school, they're kind of incentivized to do a better job for all of their students and offer a better product or service. I'm optimistic, and time would tell that if we're able to get something like school choice done in Pennsylvania, I think it would be a benefit to all groups of people, including the intellectual and developmental disability community.
Thank you, sir. And then also, what ways would you promote meaningful employment opportunities in your district for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Right. So I think this starts with opening a dialogue with business owners and corporations and manufacturers. I think having a good relationship there could really open a doorway for meaningful employment. And the thing that's exciting about my district and York County at large is there's a lot of very unique, good paying manufacturing jobs. In fact, I think the number in York County at large it might be as many as 18% of the employment opportunities come from the manufacturing sector. So I think kind of opening a dialogue with some of those manufacturers and other employers would be a good start, and kind of encouraging them to be open to this possibility would be good. And that there are people in the intellectual and developmental disability community that are capable of doing many things. It's a valuable group, and certainly there's some roles that develop special training. I'm not like machinists, but there's value that this community can bring to any field. I think as a freshman, I don't know exactly how we could start that dialogue, but there's a lot of manufacturing groups in our community, and it's as simple as going to them and starting a conversation. That would be a good first step.
The Meet the Candidates series is an opportunity for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to hear from candidates on disability issues. Candidates from all parties have been invited to participate. The ARC of Pennsylvania is a non-partisan organization and does not endorse political candidates.